Greetings, legendary readers. Welcome to Larry's Legendary Library, where we explore science fiction, fantasy, and the deeper wonder within them. Last Wednesday, we kicked off a miniseries on pseudonyms. And I'll be honest, I find pseudonyms to be very fascinating. They're fun and just a little bit mysterious. Because when an author uses a pseudonym, they're not just changing a name. They're stepping into a different identity. Sometimes it's practical, so that they can publish more than one story in a single issue, as Robert A. Heinlein did. Sometimes it's necessary to simply be read in an era of prejudice like Andre Norton. And sometimes it's creative to experiment with tone, style, or ideas without reshaping their established voice, something that Isaac Asimov did. Over the next 4 Magazine Mondays, we're going to explore 4 different authors and their hidden identities. Today is Heinlein, then Henry Kuttner, Robert Silverberg, and then finally Cordwainer Smith. Today we're looking at 2 stories, 2 pseudonyms, and 2 very different sides of Robert A. Heinlein. By His Bootstraps by Anson MacDonald, and The Unpleasant Profession of Jonathan Hoag by John Riverside. If you enjoy exploring the deeper wonder in science fiction and fantasy, consider joining the legendary readers by subscribing. First, By His Bootstraps, a novella by Anson MacDonald. Anson, by the way, is Heinlein's middle name. That's the A in Robert A. Heinlein. This story first appeared in the October 1941 issue of Astounding Science Fiction. It later appeared in multiple anthologies under Heinlein's real name. And interestingly, Anson MacDonald scored the cover art by Hubert Rogers, while Heinlein also appeared in the same issue under his own name with Common Sense. At first glance, By His Bootstraps is a clever time travel puzzle. A man walks through a door and meets himself, and then another version of himself, and then another. And what unfolds is a tightly wound loop of cause and effect, where every action seems to create the very situation that caused it. But the deeper wonder isn't just the mechanics, it's the question of agency. Are we making choices, or are we simply fulfilling roles that have already been written? Heinlein constructs a universe where free will feels real, but every decision seems to indicate otherwise. And that tension between freedom and inevitability is something that we still wrestle with today. Because in our lives, we often feel like we're choosing our own path. But how much of our path is shaped by who we already are? Our habits, our past decisions, our patterns, or, if you believe in such things, a higher power. By His Bootstraps suggests something unsettling, that we may become the very person we were always destined to be, not in spite of our choices, but because of them. And that's where the puzzle becomes philosophy. Next, The Unpleasant Profession of Jonathan Hoag by John Riverside. This story appeared in the October 1942 issue of Unknown Worlds. Unlike Astounding Science Fiction magazine, which leaned into hard science fiction, Unknown Worlds specialized in fantasy and the strange. There's no major cover art connection here, but interestingly, John Riverside received top billing on the cover. And unlike the previous example, there are no other Heinlein stories in this issue. So why use a pseudonym? the most convincing explanation comes down to tone. By 1942, Heinlein had built a reputation for logical, structured, problem-solving science fiction. But Jonathan Hoag is something else entirely. It's surreal. It's unsettling. It's almost metaphysical horror. And it's very likely that Heinlein, or the editor, John W. Campbell Jr., wanted to protect that expectation. This was brand management before we called it brand management. If By His Bootstraps is about control, Jonathan Hoag is about the terrifying possibility that we never had control at all. The story begins almost like a mystery, a puzzle, a man who doesn't know what he does for a living during the day. But as it unfolds, the ground beneath reality begins to crack. What if the world we experience isn't the real world? What if it's just a surface, a kind of constructed layer? And worse, what if there are things outside that layer watching? Heinlein leans into something rare for him here: cosmic unease. Not just fear of the unknown, but fear that knowing itself may be dangerous. That pulling back of the curtain doesn't reveal truth, but something that was never meant to be seen. And this is where the story becomes deeply philosophical. It asks whether reality is something we discover or whether something we are just allowed to perceive. Because there are limits to what we can see and to what we can understand. Then maybe those limits aren't accidental. Maybe they're protective. And Jonathan Hoag leaves you with that lingering question. If we were given the chance to see beyond reality, would you actually want to? Stay tuned next week. We will continue our pseudonym journey with the Identities of Henry Kuttner. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep exploring the deeper wonder.